Imagine sitting in a restaurant, having a meal, and not knowing that one of the most famous men in the world is sitting right next to you, disguised as someone else. That's exactly what happened when Donald Trump, the former president of the United States, decided to go undercover as a homeless person in a restaurant. But why would someone like Trump, who has everything, choose to do something so unusual? It's a question that had everyone guessing, and that's where the story begins. For many people, the idea of Donald Trump is tied to wealth, power, and success. But what if, for just a moment, he chose to experience life from a completely different perspective? In a world where people often judge others by their appearance, what happens when someone who is used to being in the spotlight decides to blend into the background? The tension starts to build right here. What was going through Trump's mind as he made the decision to step away from the world of luxury and fame? The idea of going undercover is not new, but it's often done by people who want to see how the other half lives. But Donald Trump, the man who has been in the news for decades? What could he possibly want to learn from spending time as a homeless person? The curiosity starts to grow. Why would he make this decision? What does he hope to find? And more importantly, how would people around him react when they had no idea who he really was? In the next chapter, we'll dive deeper into the details of what happened when Trump entered that restaurant and how the people there reacted to his presence. Was he treated with kindness, or did the people around him completely ignore him? Stick around, because what happens next is sure to surprise you. Trump enters the restaurant, but not in the way you might expect. Instead of walking in with the usual air of confidence that comes with being one of the most well-known figures in the world, he enters quietly, blending in as much as he can. Dressed in worn clothes, his face unshaven, and his hair hidden under a hat, Trump looks like a completely different person. He doesn't have his usual entourage or security guards around him. He's just another person, sitting at the back of the restaurant, waiting to see how others will react. The staff at the restaurant are busy with their tasks, serving customers and making sure everything runs smoothly. But when they see this homeless man sitting alone, they don't immediately rush to help. There's a sense of indifference. People are used to seeing homeless individuals around, and often, they are ignored or treated as if they don't matter. This is the first moment of tension in the story. How long will it take for someone to notice him? How will the people in the restaurant respond to his presence? As Trump sits there, trying to go unnoticed, he begins to observe the people around him. Some seem to be too absorbed in their own lives to pay any attention. Others give him a quick glance before going back to their own conversations. It's not until the food is brought to a nearby table that the tension in the room starts to build. People are beginning to notice something strange. Why is this man sitting alone? Why isn't he asking for food or money? What is he waiting for? Just as you're starting to wonder what will happen next, something unexpected occurs. One of the waiters finally approaches Trump. But instead of offering food or sympathy, the waiter asks if he needs anything. The simplicity of the question sends a wave of curiosity. Why did the waiter ask this? What could be happening behind the scenes? You won't believe what happens next. The moment the waiter approaches Trump, there's a brief exchange of glances. For a split second, Trump's true identity could be revealed, but he keeps his cool. He doesn't want anyone to know who he really is just yet. The waiter's question seems simple enough, but it holds more weight than anyone realizes. Trump looks at him with tired eyes, and for a moment, it's as if he's unsure of what to say. Should he tell the waiter the truth? Should he reveal who he really is? But instead of doing that, he asks for a glass of water, which is met with a polite nod from the waiter. This small interaction is more significant than it seems. For the first time in a long while, Trump is not commanding attention. He's not giving orders or being treated like a powerful figure. Instead, he's just another person, and that's a hard thing for someone who's been in the spotlight for so long to accept. The waiter doesn't recognize him, which only adds to the tension. Is it possible that no one will recognize him? Can he truly blend in, or will his past follow him no matter where he goes? But the waiter's actions aren't as simple as they seem. After delivering the water, he takes a moment to look at Trump a little longer. Maybe it's curiosity. Maybe it's something about Trump's eyes, the way he carries himself even in this situation. The tension builds again. Is the waiter beginning to recognize who Trump really is? Or is he just puzzled by the strange situation? As the minutes go by, people in the restaurant continue to go about their business, some noticing the man in the corner, others completely ignoring him. But then, something happens that will change everything. A group of people sitting nearby starts talking in hushed tones. They seem to be discussing Trump. How do they know who he is? Why is he here? What is going on? The curiosity is at its peak now, and you can't help but wonder how this situation will unfold. As the murmurs of the nearby group grow louder, Trump, still in his disguise, starts to feel a sense of unease. It's a strange feeling for someone who's usually in full control of every situation. The whispers seem to grow, and Trump, trying his best to keep a low profile, can't help but feel the pressure mounting. He knows he's close to being exposed, and the tension is almost unbearable. It's not like the usual attention he's used to, where people are excited or eager to hear his opinion. No, this is different. This is a moment where he's vulnerable, and the whole world feels like it's closing in on him. One of the people at the nearby table stands up and walks over to Trump. The anticipation in the air is palpable. Everyone around is wondering, will they recognize him? Will they make the connection between the man in the corner and the former president of the United States? The person approaches Trump cautiously, scanning him up and down. They stare at him for a moment before finally speaking. "Excuse me, are you Donald Trump?" the person asks, their voice filled with both confusion and curiosity. For a moment, it feels like time stands still. Trump's heart races. The tension is at its peak. What will happen now? Will he reveal himself? Or will he continue the ruse and maintain his cover? Trump takes a deep breath, and with a calm yet slightly strained smile, he says, "No, I'm not Donald Trump. I'm just a man having a meal." The way he says it is almost believable. The tension eases just a little, and the person hesitates before walking away, still unsure. But the question lingers in the air. Did they truly buy his story, or were they just too unsure to press further? As the person returns to their table, the atmosphere in the restaurant shifts. It's like everyone is waiting for something to happen. The curiosity is no longer about whether Trump is truly disguised, but what will happen now that he's been recognized. This small interaction sets off a chain of events. Word starts to spread, and others in the restaurant begin to notice the man in the corner. Could he really be the famous billionaire and former president? The question hangs in the air like a thick fog. It's at this point that something surprising happens. The restaurant manager, who had been watching the scene unfold from a distance, walks over to Trump. He greets him with a warm smile, asking if everything is all right. Unlike the indifference he received from the staff earlier, the manager shows genuine concern. Is he trying to be polite, or does he actually recognize Trump now? The manager asks, "Are you sure you're okay? You seem a bit down." Trump, still in character, looks up at the manager. This is a man who's used to being treated with respect, even reverence. Yet now, in his current situation, he's experiencing something entirely new: empathy. The manager isn't asking out of curiosity or for recognition. He's simply concerned about a person who might be struggling. And for a moment, Trump feels something he hasn't felt in a long time: the sting of vulnerability. But as the manager walks away, the tension returns. Will anyone else figure it out? What will happen next? With the whole restaurant now watching, Trump starts to feel the weight of being an ordinary person once again. It's both unsettling and revealing. The world he knew as a powerful leader suddenly feels far away, and for the first time, he wonders if he truly understands what it means to be invisible to the world. After the brief exchange with the manager, the restaurant returns to its usual hum, but the atmosphere has changed. The people around Trump are now more aware of him than ever. They're not sure if they should approach him, offer help, or simply leave him to his solitude. It's a strange dynamic that Trump has never encountered before. In his life, he's always been in control, always in charge of the situation. But now, he's just another person in the crowd, blending in, almost forgotten. The tension builds again as a new group enters the restaurant. This time, the group seems to have a different energy. They're not just focused on their meals or conversations. They're scanning the room, looking around, trying to figure out if there's anyone worth noticing. As they walk in, one of them, a woman with sharp eyes, immediately spots Trump. She freezes, her eyes locking onto him. There's a flicker of recognition in her gaze, but she doesn't say anything. She turns to her friends and whispers something. The tension in the air thickens. This moment, though brief, is crucial. It's as if everyone in the room is holding their breath, waiting for the truth to come out. Will she speak up? Will she expose Trump for who he truly is? Or will she let it go? The curiosity of the restaurant's patrons is palpable. Everyone is wondering the same thing: is this really him? After what feels like an eternity, the woman finally approaches Trump. With a cautious smile, she asks, "I'm sorry, but do you mind if I sit here for a moment? I promise I'm not bothering you." Trump looks up at her. For a moment, he's unsure of how to respond. Should he continue the charade, or is it time to reveal the truth? The tension is almost unbearable. The eyes of everyone in the room seem to be focused on him. But before Trump can answer, the woman leans in slightly, lowering her voice to a whisper. "I know who you are," she says. "You're Donald Trump, aren't you?" The question is simple, but the way she asks it is filled with so much curiosity and disbelief. It's as if she can't quite believe it herself. Trump pauses, weighing his options. The room holds its breath as he makes his decision. Will he reveal the truth, or will he stay in character for just a little longer? With everyone waiting for an answer, Trump decides that the time has come to stop pretending. He looks the woman in the eyes, and with a sigh, he says, "Yes, I am Donald Trump. The words hit the room like a shockwave. People stop talking. Conversations come to an abrupt halt. The tension that had been building throughout the entire experience reaches its peak. The woman's eyes widen in surprise, and she takes a step back. The truth is out, and now the restaurant is filled with a mixture of awe, confusion, and disbelief. The curiosity that had been simmering throughout the meal now explodes. People start talking. Some ask him why he's there, others simply stare in amazement. But what happens next is truly unexpected. Instead of the usual flurry of questions about his presidency, his wealth, or his political views, Trump is met with something much more personal. People begin asking him about his life, his struggles, and his experiences. They want to know what it's like to live in his shoes, to go through the highs and lows he's faced. They're no longer just curious about his fame, they want to understand the man behind the title. Trump, who is used to being the one asking questions, now finds himself on the receiving end. It's a humbling experience for him. The tension has shifted from curiosity to genuine human connection. As people begin to ask him about his life, Trump reflects on the years he's spent in the public eye. But more than that, he starts to realize that being famous doesn't make you immune to the struggles of everyday life. As the conversation continues, Trump finds himself in a place he's never been before, vulnerable and real. For the first time in a long time, he's no longer in control of the narrative. The people in the restaurant are no longer looking at him as the former president or the billionaire businessman. They're looking at him as just another person. This shift in perspective is eye-opening for Trump. He begins to understand what it's like to be treated like everyone else, to be a face in the crowd. By the end of the evening, Trump leaves the restaurant. The experience has changed him in ways he never anticipated. As he walks out the door, he knows that the world he lives in, one of power, wealth, and fame, will never be the same. He's seen a different side of life, and that has left an impact on him. But the real question is, how will the people in the restaurant remember this encounter? Will they tell their friends about the time they shared a meal with Donald Trump, disguised as a homeless man? Or will they simply walk away, unsure of what to make of the strange experience they just witnessed? One thing is certain. Trump's decision to go undercover that day will leave a lasting impression on everyone involved. And for him, it will be a reminder of what it means to be truly seen, not as a title or a persona, but as a person. As the doors of the restaurant close behind him, Donald Trump feels a strange mixture of relief and introspection. The world outside is still the same, but inside his mind, things have shifted. He's experienced something he never thought he would, something that might not be able to change in an instant, but could plant the seed of change. But that evening, as he walks to his car, Trump feels a wave of emotions. Confusion, regret, and maybe even a bit of enlightenment. After all, what he had experienced in that restaurant wasn't just about blending in. It wasn't just about seeing the world through the eyes of someone who struggles daily with the harsh realities of life. It was about the power of human connection. The people in the restaurant didn't treat him like the former president or the billionaire businessman they knew. They treated him like a person. They didn't care about his name, his title, or his wealth. They saw him as someone who might have been forgotten by the rest of the world, and for a brief moment, he was given the opportunity to exist without any labels. For Trump, this might have been an eye-opening experience. It could have been a moment of clarity. But how would he process it in the days that followed? Would he brush it off as an interesting experiment, or would it spark something deeper inside of him? Could this experience of being treated like an ordinary person lead him to think more critically about how others are treated, especially those who are overlooked by society? Or would the fame and power he's built up over his life be too strong for him to ever fully embrace the ordinary life that he had just experienced? The questions linger as Trump gets into his car and drives away. But one thing is certain. This evening won't be easily forgotten. As news of Donald Trump's undercover experiment starts to spread, the world reacts in ways Trump could never have predicted. What had started as a simple decision to go undercover and experience life from a different perspective soon becomes a media sensation. The story of the former president dining as a homeless person at a restaurant quickly hits the headlines. News outlets and social media are buzzing with discussions about his motives, the meaning behind the act, and the reactions of the people in the restaurant. Some people are amazed by Trump's willingness to step out of his comfort zone and experience life as someone who doesn't have the luxury of power and wealth. They applaud him for trying to understand the struggles of everyday people, for showing a level of humility and curiosity that isn't often associated with figures of his stature. For these people, Trump's decision to go undercover is seen as a positive step toward bridging the gap between the elite and the working class. However, there are also critics who feel that Trump's actions were disingenuous. Some argue that it's easy for someone with his wealth and power to step into the shoes of someone less fortunate for just a brief moment. They claim that this was nothing more than a publicity stunt, a way for him to garner sympathy or attention without truly understanding the hardships faced by homeless people. To them, the idea of a billionaire pretending to be homeless feels like an insult. The tension between these two perspectives creates a whirlwind of discussion. Some people call for more empathy and understanding, while others dismiss Trump's actions as nothing more than a show. But in the midst of this debate, one thing becomes clear. Trump's decision to go undercover has sparked a much-needed conversation about how society treats those who are often overlooked. As the media frenzy continues, Trump finds himself in the center of a storm he never saw coming. For once, he's not just the man making the news, he's the subject of it. And while the opinions of the public are divided, one thing is certain. His actions have forced people to confront their assumptions and judgments about both the homeless and the powerful. Back in his private life, Donald Trump finds himself reflecting on the evening more than he expected. The experience wasn't just an experiment or a brief escape from his daily life, it was a moment that stirred something within him. He begins to have conversations with his close family and advisors about the experience. At first, they are all skeptical, not fully understanding why he decided to do something so out of character. But as Trump begins to explain how the encounter changed the way he views the world, the people around him start to listen. It's clear that Trump has been affected by this experience, and his family begins to notice small changes in his behavior. For someone who has been at the top of the political and business world for so long, he's used to being in control. He's used to making decisions that affect millions of people. But now, for the first time in a long while, he feels unsure about some of the choices he's made in the past. The act of going undercover as a homeless person has forced him to confront his own privilege in a way that he never expected. For Trump, this is a turning point. He begins to have more open conversations with people who work in lower-income communities. He starts visiting homeless shelters and outreach programs, not as a publicity stunt, but because he genuinely wants to understand what's happening in these spaces. The experience in the restaurant has sparked something inside him, and he feels a new sense of responsibility to take action and make a difference. Whether this change is temporary or permanent remains to be seen, but for the first time in a long while, Trump seems focused on something other than his own wealth and power. As the months pass, Donald Trump's decision to go undercover begins to have lasting effects, both on his public image and on the way he views the world. While his critics continue to dismiss his actions as a stunt, many others begin to see him in a different light. Trump's willingness to step outside of his usual world, to experience life from a different perspective, has caused many people to rethink their assumptions about him. In the media, there's less focus on the political controversies that have followed him throughout his career and more attention on his attempts to make a difference in communities that have long been ignored. People begin to see Trump as someone who is capable of growth, someone who is willing to learn from his experiences. Whether or not his efforts lead to significant change remains to be seen, but there's a new level of respect for the former president that wasn't there before. On a personal level, Trump's relationships with his family and friends have deepened. He's no longer just the figurehead of a powerful empire. He's someone who has been changed by his experiences, someone who has learned to empathize with people who were once so distant from him. He's still a powerful figure, but he's now viewed through a different lens, one that takes into account his ability to grow, learn, and evolve. As Trump continues to move forward in his life, it's clear that the experience of going undercover has shaped him in profound ways. Whether it's a temporary change or a permanent shift in perspective, one thing is certain. This unexpected adventure has left an indelible mark on Donald Trump, and it will forever be a part of his story. Years later, when people look back on Donald Trump's life, they'll likely focus on the many highs and lows he's experienced. But for some, the story that will stand out the most is the one where he decided to step into the shoes of someone who had nothing. It's not the political battles, the business triumphs, or even the controversies that will define him for some. It will be the moment when he chose to see the world from a different perspective, when he chose to be vulnerable, when he chose to live like the people who are often forgotten by society. In the end, it's not about the act itself, but the change it inspired in both Trump and those around him. The ripple effects of this decision will continue to influence how he's remembered. And perhaps, more importantly, it will influence how society views the relationship between power, privilege, and empathy. The world is full of stories of the powerful, but Trump's story might just be remembered for one small, yet significant, moment: the time he went undercover as a homeless man in a restaurant.